Hi, everybody. All right, so I have been watching that program with Leah Remini on Scientology. And as I was watching this show about Scientology, which was just absolutely appalling, I mean, just really, very, very scary. But as I'm watching it over and over again, I was with my husband and I kept saying, I feel like this is what I've been through. And now, granted, on a smaller scale, because I'm just one person and we're talking about just my family. But I've said before that what happens in a narcissistic family when someone gets targeted and the whole smear campaign and all that stuff kind of happens, it's the same sort of principles happening over at the Church of Scientology. And there's definitely a couple of distinct types of people there. And what was really heartbreaking about it was that so many of the people that joined the Church of Scientology for all the right reasons. They were told that it was, a way to be your best self, a way to help the planet, a way to help other people. Just, all these really important reasons for wanting to join it. And everyone that she had on this program that had defected effectively. They didn't use the word defect, but they used the word escape a couple of times. But these people that defected, they were leaving after decades. 27, 35, 40, 47 years, incredible amounts of time. And to do so, they had to leave their families behind. What resonated with me was that it was impossible to maintain relationships with people inside. If you were outside, they wouldn't maintain relationships with you. They labeled you a suppressive person and you were basically considered evil if you were talking against them. And so they basically had to, cut you off. And so people made the decision to leave the church knowing that they might never see their child again or their mother again or, things like that. Well, of course, after the holidays had passed, it was a really, really sad holiday for me. I'm going to be really honest. It took a little while for it to sort of sink in, but, my first holiday without my son. And, it wasn't even exactly that so much as it was the cruelty of the rest of the family. My son's entire family on both sides lives here. And I didn't get a call. Nobody said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, how are you doing? Are you making it through okay? Nobody said anything like that. And I get it that because the way it's been set up, that's awkward to do because no one's ever said that. And there were lots of times when I wasn't okay. And neither was he, obviously. So it gets more and more awkward. The less they do, the longer it goes on, the more awkward it gets. But still, it just sort of hit me. The isolation that my ex-husband was affected in getting. And even the friends that he didn't get to go against me, they were affected too because my life was so unmanageable that I ended up pulling away from them and only recently reconnected with them. And so, they got real used to not having me around. And so here I am, I'm back in their life, but, I didn't really hear from them either. And so it really hit me about the community and how come here some 20 years ago to settle down and have a family around all of my family because I thought that it would be the best for a kid to have their extended family and a community of people to love them and to belong in a community like that. And I was going by what I assumed was the truth. I didn't remember my childhood very much. So I was going on wishful thinking. I was going on social norms. I was going on my beliefs about what I thought was true for my family. And mostly I was going on what I wanted and what society told me would be possible. So I came home. And as I've said in other stories, I almost immediately realized that something wasn't right. I almost immediately realized that my mother wasn't happy that I was here. And that's how I ended up getting hooked up with my husband. Things rushed along because I was not wanting to think about what was wrong with my parents, what was wrong, why they wouldn't want me back, what was going on there, why they were so detached. I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted everything to be okay. So then this guy came in and he let me know that he would fulfill all the needs, the emotional needs that I had that my parents weren't fulfilling. And whirlwind, and we got married, and the rest is history, as you know. After 10 years up here, I almost died of lovelessness, as I've talked about before. Basically, my heart broke. And then another 15 years later, and my son essentially died of the same thing. And there's been no progress in the family. No one has come around. No one has changed. If I had known back in 2005 or so, when everything had just fallen apart, I didn't believe back then that it was going to stay that way. I totally believed that people were going to come around. But I mattered, my kids and I mattered, that they wouldn't just let us go. As I sit here and I have a son that's gone, and I think about my parents, and my parents actually gave my son a portrait of themselves this Christmas. And I'm looking at this portrait, and they look great. I haven't seen them in 15 years. They look the same. They haven't really aged much at all, and they look perfectly happy. I'm thinking they're not like people that have lost a daughter, because they haven't lost a daughter. That's the thing. They haven't lost a daughter. They chose to walk away. Apparently my mother puts things on Facebook and stuff like that to make it look like, she's feeling sad, and that to make me look like the bad guy. But the way that she is, the way that she looks, the way that she acts is nothing like the way that I am, having lost a son. They act very much like cult leaders. This is what this episode is about. As I was looking at, watching this show, and I was looking at the parallels between the narcissistic family and cults, and how very, very similar they are. Family is a culture, and even you break that down into the people that are just inside your home, because there's an extended family as a culture, but then there is a culture just inside the home. The people that all live together inside the four walls of a home create a culture that is nuanced and specific and different, and in such ways that you don't even think about it a lot of the time. It just becomes very normal for you. And I've thought a lot about the culture of the home that I grew up in, especially once I could finally remember it, because I couldn't remember it for so long. I think about it and remember it. And, one thing I want to do another episode on this, but, one thing is, it wasn't all bad either. I want to make an episode about that one time, because you get the impression that, life was just always a nightmare. And it wasn't, it wasn't. There were things that were good about my life with my parents and my brother, and qualities and things that I have in me that came from that. Just as is true with the Church of Scientology. There's some really good people there with, hard workers who had really high ideals about wanting to do good in the world and all that. So that stuff they still have, those qualities were reinforced. That church is very, very dogmatic. It requires a lot of reading, a lot of financial investment. A lot of the people that spoke had gotten in as children. They came in with their parents, and a lot of parents joined when, they were kind of going through a rough time, like maybe just after a divorce, they were welcoming and all that. And the things that would go on, and the things that you just continue to let happen because you don't know how abnormal it is. And so here was, one thing that they kept saying in this show was, there was this little guy, and he's physically abusive. I mean, he physically attacks people, including all these great big guys that are in this church. And they don't, I think, why does the guy just level the guy? Because he's a really little guy. I mean, like Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, and Tom Cruise hugged him in a scene, and he was like several inches taller than this guy. And Tom Cruise is only about 5'6". So I'm guessing this guy's like 5'3". So he's, really little guy. And physically abusive, and just so funny because it seems so much like Hitler, because Hitler had these ideals about that they were going to have this Aryan race, but yet he was nothing like the race that he was talking about. So there's always this like little inferior kind of guy. This guy just physically attacks these big guys, and they don't fight back. And I'm going, why don't they fight back? And it's because they really believe that they've done something wrong. One person said, well, imagine that you're a Catholic and the Pope slapped you. It'd be so disorienting. You'd be thinking, well, I must have really done something wrong to have upset the Pope. this guy was telling a story to a friend that was a Navy SEAL, and he goes, "Oh, I would have flattened him." And he goes, "Yeah, well, what if he was an admiral?" And he goes, "Oh, I get it, because they have these ranks. And in fact, in the Church of Scientology, they even borrow the Navy uniforms and the Navy way of doing things because L. Ron Hubbard, the guy that started the thing, something about the Navy. So ships were a big part of his thing because he'd get out into international waters where things couldn't be regulated. That was one reason. But also because he could keep people captive on ships and do a lot of psychological stuff with them. I mean, the psychological torture in the Church of Scientology was really incredible. The main threat that keeps people in line is the threat of being cut off, the threat of being exiled. And it just rang so true to me, because what was the threat in my narcissistic family? It was the threat of being abandoned, of being cut off. I always had sensed that it was possible that if I needed too much, if I didn't play my cards just right, that it was possible for my parents and eventually for my husband, it would be possible for them to turn their backs on me. If I didn't make myself an asset, if I didn't make their lives better all the time, every minute, if they couldn't see that their lives were better because I was in their lives, they would be able to just turn their backs on me. And I never said it. I never articulated it. I never even consciously said it to myself, but it was there. And when it started to happening, I realized that my worst fears were true. I was never going to test it to find out if it was true. I was going to always make sure that I was never going to ask for anything. I was never going to need too much. And then, of course, I almost died and I had no choice. I needed them. And when I needed them most, they abandoned me, made up a story, and did the whole smear campaign. And the aggressiveness of it and the ruthlessness of it was shocking, really shocking. And the whole time I was watching that Church of Scientology documentary, that's the same thing I kept thinking. I mean, they were relentless. But good to get this too. I didn't go against anybody. It was basically that my husband wanted out. He wanted me gone, and I had the audacity to keep living. They saved my life. I didn't die when I had the heart attack. And during the whole process, he decided that that's really what he wanted. Of course, my family, they don't know even to this day that I didn't do anything. They think I did do something. They think that I did. They think it's about more than my husband just wanting out of our marriage. They think that I was talking out about them, just as in the Church of Scientology, same exact thing. That's about the worst thing you could do, is speak out against them. Of course, I wasn't doing that, but they think that I was, and that's what they reacted to. And at this point, 15 years later, I don't even know how clear they are on what they thought then, or what they think of it still. But one thing is very clear, and that is that there is no getting through to them. There's no overriding thought of, she's my daughter, that's all I know, that's what matters most. This is my family. There's no thoughts about that. And there was no thoughts about wanting to give me the benefit of the doubt. If we don't know exactly, why don't we give her the benefit of the doubt? There was nothing about that. They were eager and willing to assume the worst of me. And so he told them something that he knew would trigger them, and the rest is history. But this was just exactly like what was happening over there. It was just really uncanny. And so when you start talking out about the Church of Scientology, they call you the suppressive person. They basically do the smear campaign. They get everyone basically to shun you and go against you. And your whole community, your whole lifestyle, your everything is in that community. Well, that's the same thing. It was true for me. My husband and I were both raised in this town, and so built a life around right here in our small town. And so I was shunned from my community that I had, was born and raised in. And even though I had my own friends, he had his own friends, there was enough crossover between my family and my friends. And I mean, if they had the propensity to believe my parents, and they didn't know not to believe them, then they were led down the wrong wrong path. And there really wasn't anybody who, before any of this happened, knew not to listen to my parents. I had never said anything about my parents. I didn't know that this was possible. I didn't believe that they would ever smear campaign me. I didn't ever think they would, go out and gossip about me and try and ruin my friendships. And I never imagined that. What I imagined was that they would disown me. I figured they could disown me, that they could turn their backs on me, but I didn't see them going out and trying to harm me and trying to sabotage my life and trying to make life difficult for me and my kids and all the things that they did. I didn't see that coming at all. And they did all those things, and all the things that they did to me were happening at Church of Scientology. It was the same exact thing. And granted, it got a little more high tech. They had the cameras and private investigators and all these kinds of things because they had more money and more reasons to worry about it. But in my life, my ex-husband was worried about money, but I had none, and I had no power. He had it all, and so once he did all his dirty dealings, he didn't have any reason to follow me. My family was determined to destroy my credibility because they thought that I was coming out talking against them. And when I wasn't friendly, when I said, well, I would love to meet with you in a therapist's office, they immediately were like, why would we have to go to a therapist's office? That implies something's wrong with them. And just that implication was, they are never going to take a responsibility for anything that they did to me, anything that being any part of anything, doing anything wrong. I mean, okay, if I really didn't think that I did anything wrong and I loved my kid, to me, there's no scenario where I wouldn't go. There's just no scenario where I wouldn't go. I was feeling a little raw, having, the holidays without my son, worrying about my younger son. Family all got together, basically motoring along just fine, seeing each other, and I'm the only one that's excluded. I didn't get to see my niece and nephew. I didn't get to see anybody. And I realized, after 15 years, even when my son has died, at the point of coming over to see me, that hurts. It just really hurts. As I watched this show last night, I thought, this is what they do. And all these people were crying on the show too. It's what they do. They destroy families. I guess my family could say they didn't destroy the family because I'm the only one kicked out. My sons and I, I was kicked out. And, maybe they think their family is fine, but that's not a family. That's not a family. That's a cult. That's a cult. If your mother and father can just turn their backs on you when you need them, that's not a family. That's a cult.